Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. I will call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Director Grasha?
He's muted. There we go.
Here, sorry.
Thank you. Director Sewell?
Here.
Director Martin?
Here.
Vice President Duncan?
Here.
And President Wright?
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. We'll go into the public input. Would anybody like to make a comment on something that's not on the agenda today? Just a normal public comment. Do we have anybody, Dory?
I do have members of the public. They seem to be muted, and I have not muted anyone. So please unmute yourself and indicate if you would like to make public comment.
Or if you know how to raise your hand on this thing too, you can do that.
Yes. If you'll notice, for those new to this platform, there should be 3 dots next to the More button inside the participants screen. If you click those 3 dots, there's a hand raise icon. If there is something that you would like to say, or if you have a question at any time, please raise your hand and we will get to your questions after the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So hearing no public input for items not on the agenda, we will go to the agenda item that we are here for. Meter replacement, advancement metering infrastructure, and update. So I will turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, President Wright. Welcome, directors, public, MSWD staff. Before we get right into the presentation, I'd just like to say a couple of words. One, we understand that our customers are unhappy about the high consumption and subsequent high bills. We ask, please call us, we can help. Our meter replacement program to this point has been very successful. The new meters are performing well and as we expected. While the meter replacement programs are necessary, normally they're completed in phases. In this particular case, the program was forced upon us due to a manufacturing failure, which impacted a large number of our meters. Because of this failure, we were then required to estimate consumption. We took every precaution not to overcharge our customers. We've responded in a prudent manner that will ultimately result in more than likely litigation and obviously the replacement of those manufacturing failed meters. And it will be eventually to our success with our new meters. It provides us a lot of new technology and a lot of information, and we'll be passing that information on to our customers once we get the customer portal up and running. This is a proven technology and equipment. We're not alone in using this. Other water districts here in the Coachella Valley are using advanced metering infrastructure technology, and they're also using it system-wide like we're implementing. Again, we understand that our customers are unhappy. I myself experienced the increase in my bill when my meter was changed out several years ago. As you can imagine, when I opened my new bill after getting my new meter and I saw it increase by 10 times, I freaked out. I was concerned. I didn't have to call because I knew I was getting a new meter, but I understand if you don't understand the inaccuracy of old meters, the accuracy of new meters, it's a scary process. So it happens to all of us, and it's similar. What we're going through here is similar to what other agencies and other customers have gone through. Our staff has worked diligently to help hundreds of customers over the past year and worked through a variety of issues, and you'll hear about some of those later today. As the presentation will show, we have better information to help our customers now, and we, again, just ask them to please call us if you have any questions about your bill, about your consumption, or if you have a leak, don't have a leak, please do not hesitate to call us. With that being said, Mr. McHugh, would you like to start the presentation?
Sure, thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, public and members of the board and staff. Bear with me for just a second. I'll get the presentation shared. Everybody bear with me, please.
Oop, there we go. Hey, now we got Randy down there. Hi, Randy. I haven't seen you yet.
I'm hiding in here somewhere.
Okay, sorry, folks. Now we're going. So again, good afternoon. As Brian mentioned, we'd like to give an update and have a discussion and answer any questions we can relating to our AMI project and the meter replacements and estimates and everything that surrounds that project. A quick outline of what we'll go over today. We'll go over a timeline since 2018 really is when the most recent events began, and we'll go through current. We'll have a little bit more detailed discussion on estimations. Obviously, when our registers failed, it forced us to start to estimate customer consumption, and so we'll delve into that a little bit and talk about what that means. Bill adjustments in month 1 of new AMI system. What we have experienced thus far is some customers in the first month after they receive their new meter, they are experiencing a little sticker shock, and we'll talk about why that's happening and what we can do about it. The continuous flow notification. We'll talk more today about new data that is available to us that was not available to us prior to us implementing this AMI system, and what we have done with that data and what we'll be able to do with that data in the future. And what's being done, kind of where we go from here. We'll touch on a few items there, and then obviously answer any questions that anybody may have. So the timeline. You'll see, obviously, we're looking at 2018 to current time frame. Prior to this time frame, this meter changeout program was in the planning phases. We had meters that were arriving at an age in our system that we needed to start addressing, replacing them. As meters age, they lose accuracy. And because the mechanical parts inside them start to wear out, they do lose accuracy and stop measuring water as accurate as they should as they age. So that subject will be weaved throughout today's discussion, so it's an important topic. So as we move from left to right, mid-2018, we started to experience these register failures. What happened was a manufacturing issue that literally caused the register on the meter to stop working altogether. We could not even go to the meter physically and open it and look at a reading for that meter because they are digital and the LCD screens were blank when the defect occurred. As soon as that occurred and we saw a trend happening and we saw numbers of customers that were unacceptable having failed registers, we began discussions with the manufacturer to try to figure out what remedies were available to us or what we could do about this issue. In those discussions, the manufacturer severely disappointed us and basically said, there's not a lot we can do for you. So they denied the fact that we thought that all of this would be covered under warranty that comes with the registers from the factory. And they said, no, you're kind of out of luck. So the failures began or continued to increase into early 2019. And they got to a point as far as number of failures where we could not physically go through each month's billing cycle and estimate consumption for each customer. So we had to come up with an automated program. we discussed with our IT consultants this program, and they implemented it into our system. And we'll talk a little bit more about that program and some of the details of it. But basically, it looked at the prior 12 months consumption. It took an average of that consumption and used that as the consumption for that parcel or that register, as long as there was no reading being collected from that register if that register had failed. So that began in early 2019. And basically, as the district, we said, of course, we would like the manufacturer to make good on their product, but they're not doing it. And we owe it to our customers to not just continue estimating and waiting on this manufacturer. Being that the meters were already of an age that we were talking about a meter replacement program prior to this issue, we decided to step that effort up and join it in with this register program. And obviously, in the process, we could save a little bit of money for the customers in the district, because we would only be visiting every meter box in the system once to replace both the meter and the register, as opposed to just the register, as has happened in the past. So we started the process to issue a request for qualifications and interviewing manufacturers for these new meters and this new AMI system and technology. So you can see from the timeline, the RFQ was issued, and then I believe the RFQ was issued August 1st of 2019, and by the time negotiations were completed and the public contract process that the district was required to go through, the bidding process, we began installing this new system on about the second week of December of 2019. As we moved through this installation project and all of these new meters were installed, we were able to stop the estimations, not use that program anymore, because we were now getting live, accurate data from the new system. And then as of about 2 weeks ago, the installation of the new AMI system is substantially complete. There are a couple of hundred, probably less than 200 meters in the district that have not been replaced yet. And for some reason, those have extenuating circumstances surrounding them. For instance, the meter box is in the backyard, or there's a plethora of different reasons why we couldn't change it out, but we're going to go back and do that cleanup, and then obviously the project will be 100% complete. So we're almost there. Another issue we want to make sure we cover today is the communication we had with the customers during this 3-year process. Obviously, we would much prefer that it didn't happen, but since it did, we wanted to keep everybody informed as to what was going on and the efforts we were making to remedy it. On a daily basis, in this time frame that's being displayed, as well as in the past and in the future, we're constantly responding to customer calls. We have dedicated staff that's all they do is respond to customer calls. Water waste notifications, that was a result of the drought issue a few years back, but that continues. And if we do see water running down the street or any other waste of water, that's something we do on a regular basis and try to communicate with the source of that, that waste. And then obviously on a regular basis, we respond to and post social media posts, trying to keep everybody informed as much as we can. In mid-2019, there was a notice sent to all customers regarding bill estimating. We knew that this was, or we assumed that this was going to continue as far as register failures went. We saw the numbers continuing to increase as the manufacturing defect spread throughout the system. So instead of only notifying the customers that were being estimated, we notified all customers that this is an issue and we are addressing it. In addition to that, we had a public disclosure letter as soon as the AMI project was defined, and we sent a letter to them telling them that this is going to be happening over the next 6 months and what they might expect. Meter register fact sheet was included in bills in late 2019, again, in an effort to inform customers as to the issue and what's going on. When the AMI project began, we set up a project web page for it. There is a lot of information on there. There's frequently asked questions. There's the door hangers that were used and so on and so forth. About the technology, a lot of good information on that page. If you haven't seen it, you might check that out. Project update article in the district newsletter that again goes out to all customers. As I mentioned earlier, social media talking points and posts as we went along, progress, pictures of the guys out there dealing with the issues and so on and so forth. Project update again in our district newsletter in mid-2020. And then I believe customer notification for continuous use. This was mentioned, I mentioned this in the outline, this continuous use. There was some confusion surrounding this notification, and we'll touch on this a little later. But this is, again, part of some new data that we're receiving, and we thought it was prudent to pass that information along to the customer base. And on the leak front, there were a lot of questions surrounding the continuous use notice that had to do with leaks, possible leaks. We've since developed a web page that walks customers through what they can do to possibly troubleshoot leaks or other issues that might be happening on their side of the meter. And a little more detail on how we've notified customers. And some of these are the lists that I just went through on the timeline. But just to give you an idea, this is the letter to all customers about the estimates being made. Meter register fact sheet. This was a bill insert. There were some claims made on social media, and we accompanied those claims with the actual facts, just again to disseminate more information. This letter was the one describing the AMI project. We named the contractor, told customers what they might expect, and then started to inform them about some of the benefits of this new technology. The webpage for the AMI project, you can see there on the bottom half, a lot of frequently asked questions, a lot of good information, all of the door hangers and notices. If for some reason yours got thrown away or damaged or whatever, you can go to this website and those notices are there so everybody knows what they've said. Before we went into each neighborhood as part of this change out process, in the beginning of the month or approximately 4 weeks before your meter was going to be changed out, we gave people notice if they see in the trucks in the neighborhood, whatever the case may be, they were trying to keep everybody informed as to what's going on. 48 hours before the individual meter was changed out, we placed a door hanger on that residence. Hopefully everybody received them to let them know that their water service would be interrupted for a short time to make the change out. Once the change out was complete, we again put another door hanger out there with contact information, any notes that for follow-up or whatever the case may be. So you can see a lot of communication happening during this process. The newsletter that I mentioned earlier, this was a district newsletter that went out to all customers. This is the web page that was developed for leaks. We list a couple of leak detection services. We cannot refer leak detection services, but these are out there and we're aware of them. So we just want to make it a little bit more convenient for customers to contact these services if needed. And then you can see the second bottom half there, it also starts to walk you through checking for leaks yourself at your house. That picture is an actual picture of our new meters. So they're familiar with what they're looking at in their own meter box. Toilet leak test, pool leak test. There are sometimes issues with evaporative coolers, autofill equipment on pools, so on and so forth. There's a lot of information on that webpage. And bill inserts, more about leaks. If you do have a high water bill, this is what you should do. It's not uncommon when new meters are installed. And so call us if there are any questions. And as I mentioned, of course, social media monitoring and posts throughout the process. This was definitely not recent communication that has happened with this project. It's been going on for some time now and throughout this installation progress. So that's kind of a recap of where we've been and how we got to where we are. So as I mentioned, the manufacturing defect caused our registers on our meters to fail, forcing us to use estimated consumption. So let's discuss that a little bit. It's definitely an industry standard practice to use estimation. If a meter is not reading, the water purveyor literally doesn't have a lot of choice. They go back and try to figure out the average consumption for that parcel, but there are some downsides to using those estimates, and we'll go through those in a little more detail. The methodology that we used, I mentioned earlier, but what we did was, if you are, say we're now in August, your August consumption was based on August through July of the prior year, the prior 12 months. Those 12 months consumption were averaged together, and then we reduced that by 3%. That was mostly a good faith effort just to kind of get the message out there that we want to, if we are going to make an error, we want to err on the side of the customer. So there's a 3% cushion there for any major changes in your consumption habits, the seasonal fluctuation, whatever that issue may be. Again, very unique to each parcel, but that was the intent of discounting at 3%. The smoothing effect, we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail, but anytime you use an average, there's going to be a smoothing effect. With a median average, it's just kind of how the math works. You're going to have high months in those 12 months, and you're going to have low months in those 12 months. But if we take an average, there is a smoothing effect. So we'll address that. And obviously, any estimate, regardless of your methodology, is based on prior consumption. It's the only data you have to work with. And so the fact that consumption changes and we're basing everything on prior consumption, of course, it's not going to be as accurate if we had actual readings. But again, we're trying to come up with something reasonable and try to err on the side of the customer. Some of those factors that I mentioned, household turnover, other inconsistent use. You may have planted a yard since last year. You may have done a number of different things that affect your consumption. You might have had kids move out. Some of our parcels are rental properties, and so a single person could have moved out and a family of 5 could have moved in. But all we have is historical data for that parcel to base these estimates on. And depending on how old the meter was for your particular parcel, there's a loss of accuracy that if the meter is past 10 years old, there's almost a guaranteed loss of accuracy. Usually after 10 years, they start to lose accuracy. So depending on the meter age, what was being registered, even if the register would have been working, was probably less than actual because of the wear issue on those meters. So as we were able to change out all of the failed registers, or most of them anyway, people were starting to get their bill based on the new meter, based on actual consumption that's now being read through our new system. So when we compare this, and we'll look at a comparison of an example here in a minute, we've got to be careful to only compare consumption. Some customers are experiencing a little bit of sticker shock in this first month, but there are a lot of factors that go into that. So when we deal with estimates and these new meters, we have to take the rates and the DWA fees and the other fees that are on the bill kind of out of the equation and just look at the consumption to be able to compare apples to apples. And those are the two I just mentioned there. I've mentioned already that it is common to have consumption increases with new meters. The old meters were worn at varying levels, and these new meters are much more accurate. The new meters can even detect flow. Not only are they new and more accurate, they're better technology, and they can detect flow that wouldn't have even been detected by the old meter. These new meters can detect as low as 1/10 of a gallon per minute, which is pretty darn low. Consumption estimates were lower than known consumption. I kind of touched on that already with the 3% discount and the fact that the older meters wear out naturally. And obviously, you'll see a little later, July is when we really started seeing these sticker shock bills and customer calls related to these high bills. You'll see a jump in our normal weather-related consumption from June till July. It's one of our bigger increases. So we'll look at that in a little more detail in just a minute. So let's look at MSWD's typical customer. We went back and looked at customers over a 5-year period as part of our last rate study. And the result was that the typical MSWD customer consumes 13 units of water per month. Okay. So what I've done here is split up this timeline into months, obviously. And so this consumption in yellow is this MSWD customer, average customer. If you took all of those numbers highlighted in yellow, divided by 12, you'll get 13. And so that is our average typical MSWD customer. So what we're going to do is assume, because we need that 12 months for this example to calculate the estimates, we're going to assume that in January of 2019, this customer's register failed and we had to start estimating at that time. And so like I said, if we took all of those 12 months in yellow, divided it by 12, that would be your reading for July in this area, if you can see my pointer. Now, that is a rolling 12-month average. So every month, the prior 12 months is looked at. And so as you get further into the estimating process, it smooths itself even more, because now, for instance, in September, you're looking at all of these months plus only this month, this much of actual consumption. It was a rolling 12-month average. So again, that's the nature of averaging and the smoothing effect that I've referred to. Okay, and we're also going to assume for this example, and this is strictly an example to make a point, and we'll talk more about how we have to be careful using examples, because every customer and every parcel is very unique. Okay, so that first reading here of 17 would be the new reading on the new meter. We're going to assume that in June, that meter was replaced, and July was the first actual reading from the new meter. And where I got that number is back over here. That is just our typical customer's reading for July. Okay, so bear with me, and we're going to look at a few numbers here. try not to go to sleep, and hopefully we'll show you a point here. The effect of this averaging, if you compare this July to last July's bill for this example, you see it jumps from 13, the average number, back to an actual reading of 17, which is a 26% increase. So even though same customer, same parcel, the nature of these estimates that we were forced into does have a increase effect when you go back to actual readings. And if you look at that estimate compared to June, we're looking at a 37% increase over June. So the nature of these numbers are, the results of them are causing some sizable increases. You're looking at a third increase in the water bill for under this example. So let's look at July of 2019, and then we'll compare that to July of 2020. And again, this also relates to the fact that in January of 2020 was the last increase of the 5-year rate action that was implemented 5 years ago. So there was a, excuse me, there was a rate increase at this point in time. So that's going to snowball the effect of this a little bit. So under the rates that were in effect in 2019, if we use the consumption of 13 and run it through our typical bill, again, the DWA fee is a pass-through based on consumption amount that we collect and then directly pay to DWA. That money does not come to Mission Springs. Somewhat similar is the Desert Hot Springs utility tax, which is also a pass-through. But nonetheless, if you're just looking at the bottom line of your bill, it does affect it, and it will play into the sticker shock that has been happening thus far. So looking at July of 2020, actual consumption now, plugged into the current rate structure, you'll see an increase, sizable increase over 2019. 31% increase over prior year. Part of that was a rate increase, but a large part of that was a change in consumption based on the fact that we were forced into these estimations. If we did that same calculation for June, because a lot of people said, look, last month, my bill was only $49, and just this next month, and I didn't change anything, and it went to $67. Well, 36% increase. Again, we're now coming out of the smoothing effect of these estimations that we were forced into. So again, just an example. I'm sure every customer in the district is probably thinking, well, that looks great, but that really has nothing to do with me because mine doesn't look like that. Again, just an example to show you the effect of this smoothing and what can happen when we come to the end of the estimations and start to get actual consumption information. Now, to follow up on that, this new system is giving us a lot more customer consumption data than we've had in the past. The old registers, we would literally get a reading from the register once a month. You can see from this graph. Now, this graph is the district's window into our customers' consumption. This is a specific customer. Obviously, we're not going to identify that customer, but just to use as an example. You can see here that consumption is very consistent most of the month, but for some reason from the 9th of July through the 18th of July, large amounts of water were used at this property. You can see here this 1,300 cubic feet on the 18th. That's the same 13 that is our typical customer's consumption in 1 month. This customer used it in 1 day. Not to say there's anything wrong here, but consumption is very erratic and very unique to each parcel. And so this new data, we've got to be careful to look at it and in the future the intent is to have this data readily available to a customer. So you'll literally be able to look at your consumption on a daily basis. Okay, another example. It appears that this customer is not around during the week. Thursday, consumption starts up, a lot of consumption over the weekend, and it appears that maybe they're working out of town, whatever the case may be. But again, each customer and each parcel is very, very unique. Another example, very high consumption on certain days, and appearingly possibly not even around on other days. But something to note here is that let's assume that the person or there's nobody at the residence during this time frame. There is still water going on here, and they are getting a continuous consumption reading. So they could have a weeping toilet. They could have an irrigation leak. They could have something going on. And so those are all the possibilities that we know from our end. But until this customer calls us and tells us that nobody's there or whatever the circumstances are, then we can start to match our data and try to come up to a conclusion as to why this is going on. But again, just some examples to see how unique and erratic water consumption is in our system. The continuous flow notification that I mentioned, as I mentioned also, we're now getting data that we didn't have before. And when we started to get this data, really the gist of it is that about 1,000 customers out of the 13,000 customers were showing this continuous use indicator on their consumption. We thought it would be prudent to pass that information along. Why would we sit on this information if we think this is an indicator of a possible problem that the customer could be having? We thought it'd be prudent to notify these people that there's something going on. You might want to look into this. There was some misunderstanding as to the messaging. This is the actual message here in front of you that was loaded into our auto dialer. And basically when you pick up the phone, you would hear a recording of this message. It mentions leaks and it says to please check for leaks. But it also mentions, you could have an autofill on your pool that I mentioned earlier. You could have a leaky toilet, whatever the case. But in no way did we want to imply to these 1,000 people that you have a leak on your property. That was not the intent, and we regret if that is how it came across. But this was the actual language. So again, a lot more data now that we didn't have before, and we thought it would be prudent to pass that information along. So we've talked about the process up through today and kind of what's been going on. Let's talk about what's being done as far as a look into the future and where we go from here, so to speak. We are pursuing legal remedies relating to the prior manufacturer registers. Hopefully, best case scenario, we get some sort of award out of that, and we can obviously offset the cost of these new meters with that. Obviously, it's a legal issue, so who knows how that's going to turn out, but we are doing our due diligence and everything we can to pursue that. Any customer that calls in and we go out and figure out their situation, if they do have a leak and they can show us that they have fixed that leak, it is part of our duty as a water district. Conservation is part of our duty. So we can reward the fixing of those leaks. We do have some programs in place for that. Tier 1, basically, obviously, if a leak is happening, your consumption is going to go way up. Most of the consumption, other than the first 13 billing units, is going to be in Tier 2. We do have the ability to recode that and only charge Tier 1 rates to help out that customer. There are leak credits available, although it's somewhat minor. That's what's in place thus far. And if it happens to be a commercial property, we're determined that there was a leak. Obviously, that water leaked out and it didn't go down the sewer, so we're not going to charge them sewer for that amount. For commercial properties, sewer is based on water consumption. And as I mentioned earlier, ever since the project has started, the service team has gone out. We've even had calls in the middle of the night where we go out and install the new meter. And during the process, a pipe got cracked or whatever, but it waited until the middle of the night to really let loose. And we had to call our standby crews and so on and so forth. So service has been a huge part of this project, and we've had them involved since day one. And can't emphasize enough that all customers should call us if there is any sort of issue suspected. We can't conclude anything from the data we have. All we can do is pass it on, and then obviously if there's something suspected, we can help. But that is a customer responsibility that we can help with. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, we now have much, much more data available to us that is coming through this system. As I mentioned before, just to give you a little relativity, prior system, we would get a read once a month. Now we have the capability of getting a read every 15 minutes. So a huge difference in data and when water is consumed. In the future, kind of phase 2 to this project, we are going to set up what we call a customer portal. And basically, you will be able to sign on as a customer and see all of this data related to your meter, your parcel. So you'll be able to monitor all of this data on a daily basis and do with it what is appropriate for your parcel. And just coincidentally, as part of the COVID response, but it also helps to this. Recently, board action, a few board meetings ago, they increased the dollars available through our Help to Others program. This is a program that is administered by the United Way and can give bill paying assistance to customers if they apply for it and are approved. Again, customer dashboard. This is a small little screenshot of our data. This gives us the top 10 customers for that month in consumption. This gives us total system consumption, so on and so forth. There's a lot of data here that we won't go into a lot of detail because it's on our end, but data similar to this and this interface similar to this is what will be available to customers in the near future to be able to access all this new data that we're receiving. We just want to be able to pass along this data. Right now, we want to help you with it, but in the future, you can help you with it. And we now, as I mentioned several times, we now have this data to help you. And hopefully, like I said, in the near future, you will have this data in front of you on demand. And so that's kind of where we're heading and what's happening. I can't stress enough again, these resources. Obviously, the offices are open during our regular business hours. Staff is here to answer calls. You can email us at that email address on the second bullet. And there is a lot of information on our website at mswd.org. Obviously, our lobby is closed. You can't walk in and discuss your account because of COVID and other, the county regulations and so on and so forth. But we are still here. We are still available, and we want you to call if there is an issue suspected on your property. And that concludes my presentation, and I will happily answer any questions that I can.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I was on mute talking to you guys. Anyway, so thank you, and we'll start with the board. Does any of the board have any questions? We'll start. There we go. Okay, I see Russ has his hand up. Okay, Russ, and Randy then afterwards.
Okay. I have actually a couple of questions. One is on the water bill. there's a meter service charge. For the benefit of our viewers, can you explain what the meter service charge is for?
Sure.
Briefly.
Sure. Basically, it represents the costs that the district has to incur to make water available to the backside of your meter, regardless if you use 1 drop or 1 million gallons. Those costs don't change. Thus, we charge those on a standard basis to each meter.
Okay. Some of the confusion came about because people said, hey, for the last 1.5 to 2 years, I've been on an estimated bill where my meter wasn't working. Why would I be charged a meter service charge?
Yeah, I agree that that's not the clearest way to present that, and we might consider renaming that charge in the future. But it is definitely not strictly for the cost of the meter to be in the ground in front of your house. It's the cost related to the availability of the water to the backside of that meter that the district is incurring.
Okay. Another thing that while you're during your presentation, our 5-year rate adjustment was based on the revenue we were receiving at the time. And it worked fairly well for the first couple of years. I think it was inappropriate. However, with the new meters, it would appear that we're getting anywhere from 2 to 3 times more revenue from due to a more accurate water consumption on the new meters. Why wouldn't we adjust their water rate downward, make a reduction in their cost, in the cost of the service?
Okay, a couple of points there. One, the rate study, when it was done, did not take into effect the fact that we were going to be forced into these estimates. So there's no doubt we had a revenue loss from using these estimates because of that smoothing effect that I described. So that was not taken into effect in the rate study. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Well, we did base our initial 5-year plan based on the revenue we were receiving 5 years ago. And
Correct.
that was before these meters were believed to have failed, etc.
Correct.
Now with the new meters, we are getting significantly more revenue than we anticipated. My question is, why wouldn't we reduce the cost of water to our customers?
I would say that if a current rate study, if the outcome of that current rate study says that we need to, I believe we will. I would recommend that we go out and do another rate study. As much as estimations are inherently bad, as we discussed for consumption, there is a lot of estimations that go into a rate study as far as, like you mentioned, consumption levels, capital expenditure levels, staffing levels. There are a lot of assumptions that were made 5 years ago that may or may not have come true, so to speak. And so it's prudent and it's common for districts to do these rate studies every 3 to 5 years. So it's probably time to do that again.
Yeah, I certainly would recommend it because, like I said, these new meters would appear my water bill more than doubled, and as a result of the new meters, and it wasn't an astronomical amount, but I think that with the additional revenue coming in because of that, we ought to really take a hard look and maybe adjust the water rates downward. Another last thing I'll bring up is you mentioned our current policy is that when there's a leak detection or a leak complaint, we send personnel out to check the line from the street to the meter, but that from the meter throughout the rest of the house is the responsibility of the homeowner. During this change, this swap over to the new meters, until we get everything smoothed out over a period of time, I would like to see that amended. And I would prefer to see the water district hire an independent contractor to, when we determine that first of all, if the meter is working right, and we determine that there's no leaks from the water line to the meter, that we at our expense do have somebody come and do a forensic analysis of where this leak is. We've got people that are, now I'm not talking about a little bump in the water rate. We're talking about some of these people have 2, 3, 4, even 5. One person had a $500 water bill. Now, clearly to me that says leak, but it wasn't from the water line to the street indicating, or yeah, wasn't from the street to the water meter indicating it somewhere in the house or in the property somewhere. I would like to see us take the initiative to get a leak expert out there to find out where this leak is. I mean, people, when you think about it, they're wasting thousands and thousands of gallons of water. And as proper stewards of the water district, that waste, we shouldn't accept that, and we should take action. And anyway, that's all my comments on that.
The only thing I would say there is obviously there's some cost related to that, but we can look into that cost and bring that back if that's what the
yeah, at least for maybe a year or so, until everybody gets we know that the system is working properly. Oh, one last point, and I believe that the system is working properly. The new meters are working properly, but I don't want us to ever assume, because we did that with the old meters, that technology can't fail. Technology can fail, and we need to be aware of that and take necessary steps to ensure that that's not the problem.
Okay, my concern with that, with going on people's property, and that is the possibility of a misuse of public funds. So I'd like to check into that before we went there. Usually what's on people's property and their leaks, sad to say, but true, that it's their responsibility what's on their property. And that leak was there probably before we changed out the meters. So they were lucky to find it. And also conservation, it would probably promote some conservation going on. If people's water bills go a little bit higher, hopefully they'll learn how to adjust it a little bit more. Same thing what's happened to us, a little bit, raised a little bit. So, we were maybe using more water than we needed because we were, water's cheap. Anyway, so
well, we got all kinds of services in the public sector that go onto private property to perform a service, and I don't know that it would be illegal for us, particularly if we take it from a conservation approach to saying, hey, this person is got 70,000 gallons of water that's leaking somewhere, and we need to be effective stewards of the water district to resolve that.
And the customer does too. Go ahead, Randy.
I want to follow along what Russ said. I absolutely agree. If we can do it right now, and I don't mean for a $5 bump in your water bill, but if somebody goes from 50 to 250, it appears there's a leak somewhere. I would like to add on, and this would have to be worked out. If we hire a leak company, they can't do any repairs. They're not going to sell work. But if they do find a leak, or I think they listen for them and say, yeah, you got a leak right down here somewhere. If we do that in the name of conservation, I think we can do that. We'll have to talk to John Pinkney, our attorney, maybe talk to Arden, find out if we can do that or not. A couple of different points. I know that brand new right out of the box. Do we have a testing mechanism for those yet?
I'm sorry, Director Duncan, the first part of your question broke up.
Okay, our meters, I know they're right out of the box right now, they're brand new. Do we have a way of testing those for accuracy, just to make sure that they're on the target?
Yes, we have a state certified meter testing facility here at the district if there is suspicion that a meter is not functioning correctly. But all of these meters, because they are new from the factory, they have to go through a state certification process to be able to be implemented in the state of California. So they have all gone through and passed this test before they get to us.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure every option is looked at. Lastly, you talked about the customer portal. I want to tie that in with the smartphone compatibility. Our youngest director here, Ivan Sewell, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ivan, he has a pilot program meter that he can at least watch on his iPhone. Are these new meters iPhone compatible? Ivan, do you have that meter set up yet in your house?
So that program was prior to these new meters going in, but I did get in the pilot program for what you're speaking of. It's actually a web browser based, so you can access it from a computer or an iPhone, and I can pull up my hourly usage.
Okay.
And I am able to see, since the new meters went in, I am about 5 to 10% higher than I was the last couple months.
Okay.
But I am able to see that almost real time, about an hour delay.
Okay. Matt, how long before we get this customer portal up and running that you're referring to?
The project timeline is probably at most 6 months. We're hoping for more like 3 to 4. But yes, this customer portal will have the capability of customers to look at their consumption and account data on their telephone.
Is there any way we can push that forward? I don't want to say money is no issue. I don't care what it costs, but even because I don't want to just tell a customer, oh, well, you have a leak, or it's a new meter, or it's the new rates. I don't want to look like we're just giving a standard canned answer. If we can actually show a customer, maybe they've got a sprinkler timer that comes on at 2 o'clock in the morning and runs for 4 hours instead of 10 minutes. That can consume a lot of water that people aren't aware of.
Sure.
Ground's dry, no leak, but it's being used, and that way they can see when and where.
And maybe just for clarification, the new data that we now have available to us, even though the customers cannot log into their personal data yet, they will be able to soon. But even though they can't do that, we have access to that data. And our service technicians can go to the meter and pull up reports like I was showing in the presentation on their mobile device and go over that data with the customer. And we do that on a regular basis.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
We're doing that now.
Are we? Okay.
Yes.
And we can pull up a month or two, or
Correct.
I know the meters are new. It can't go too far back.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
Brian, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the board may not be aware, but we are currently advertising or have a request for proposal for a customer portal out currently. So we are supposed to receive those bids, September 10th. If we need interviews, that'll happen September 24th, and then negotiated contract ends about September 30th. So we'll be bringing to you for award of contract in the month of October to move that project and start that. Now, as Matt alluded to, the typical rollout process of that is anywhere from 3 months to a year, depending on the complexity of it. What we want to do is we want to make sure to get this information in the hands of the customer as quickly as we can. And yes, we will have a cell phone abilities. We've asked for specific strengths in security, obviously, but also looking for payment options. Right now, we have one payment option. There's an opportunity using new technology, new software to open it up to, let's say, Google Pay or something like that. So give the customer a little bit when it comes to paying through their phone. So yes, the customer portal that we're working on will be very, very helpful for the customer to see this information. Hopefully, if we can get the timing done right, we can do it a lot sooner than the typical 6 months.
Okay, but at least for now, I'm happy to hear that if somebody questions their bill, when water is used, where, how, all that kind of good stuff, constant flow, they can call us. We can get it out within a few days and read that meter for them.
Yes.
Right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other board members like to ask any questions? Ivan?
Yeah, I had a couple. You mentioned about 1,000 customers that have that continuous flow, and they had the robocall call out to them to let them know. Was that robocall continuous until they've contacted us, or was it like a one-time message?
It was a one-time call.
Okay, and do we have any data on, say, of that 1,000, how many have contacted the district and figured out their issues?
I don't have the specific data, but I know, and April is on here, she might be able to chime in with a little more detail, but I bet my estimation is we've dealt with hundreds of people that have consumption questions or issues and possibly so on.
Okay. Is that something that would be easily, those that haven't called in, to send out a robocall again, that the continuous usage is still happening for their accounts?
It is definitely possible. What we've run into is it tends to, let's just say that half of those 1,000 have a viable reason as to why there is continuous consumption, whether it be the autofill thing or a swamp cooler, whatever their specific water use circumstances are. And they basically say, yeah, I have this. You called me last month. Why are you calling me again? And so it's almost a bother to some people. And so April has made an extra effort with her staff to go through the list and determine if people have been called already. And if there was something discussed, let's not call them again. And if somebody's moving way up the list where they have a lot of continuous consumption, we'll actually just call them individually rather than a robocall and ask them if they have any issues that they know about or so on and so forth.
Okay. I like that we're being proactive and calling these kind of extreme ends of the high users. Could you give us an example if someone does call in, kind of what's the process for a customer that's having a high bill?
Would it be okay if April does that, our customer service manager, because she's much more familiar with the details?
Sure.
Yes, please do, April. You're muted though. Okay, no. You were unmuted then. Oh, there we go.
I'm unmuted. Hi, everyone. So if a customer calls in, the first step is the customer service representative will ask the service address or the account number. We'll look it up on the dashboard, and that was some of the data, the graphs that you were seeing, and we'll go through whichever billing period it is that the customer is inquiring about and review that data with them. If we see something that the customer doesn't feel is maybe accurate or they're concerned with, what we'll do is we'll screenshot and send the data over directly to the customer via email. And then if they look it over and say, I'm not sure about this, we'll still send a technician out to the property. So even though we have that data present, we're not eliminating going to the property and providing that service to our customers, where the technician goes, checks out the meter, verifies the data that we're seeing on our end, makes contact with the customer, discusses if there's continuous usage showing, does it look like it's an irrigation schedule issue. Something people don't really think about is when we have power outages, a lot of times your irrigation system will revert back to factory setting, things like that. Customers don't even realize, I didn't in my own property. And they'll review all these different scenarios with the customer, see if they can, look around the property and see anything. Obviously, we don't go into the home. Our technicians are not plumbers, they're not leak detectors, but they will do everything they can to assist the customer to try to come to a conclusion. If it is truly a leak and the customer makes that repair, then once we have all the information, we work with the customer, as Matt said earlier, as we take their consumption down to tier 1, we offer a leak credit. We refer our customers to United Way. Thank you, board, for increasing that amount. It's been very needed and very well received, that $100 credit to the bill. So with all of those factors included, the customers that we've had the opportunity to work with and they've actually called us, we feel that we're doing the best we can to serve them. And if they still don't feel that way, please call back. Or if you haven't called in and are concerned, please call, because we are here to help and we want to.
Thank you, April.
Thank you.
Good job. It's good job. Any other comments?
Yeah, one more. I think, Matt, your presentation was great. One of the biggest things I think that could help the majority of people that are seeing these large increased bills are those couple slides where you talk about the estimated smoothing and how that has kind of, even though, you know, that jump of 26 or 33 or 37% from your estimated to this first month of your usage, I think that whether we could cut that into a 3 or 4 minute clip that we could then post on our website, I think that would be a quick and easy way for some of our customers to better understand the issues we're seeing.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. If I may, I'll pass it over to Brian, but I believe that is the intent, either with our website or social media or both.
Both.
Yeah,
Follow up, quick
absolutely.
question.
We're going to put his presentation online for all of our customers. The entire meeting, of course, will always be on our website under agendas and meetings and things of that nature. But we are going to take pieces of this and put it on social media so everybody has access to it. And most of the media, or excuse me, most of the platforms that people are used to seeing things, whether that be Facebook, Nextdoor, and things of that nature. So we are going to use this this presentation in a lot of different, over the course of a lot of different media platforms.
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Does anybody know if the cable company has a station, a local station where like the city used to put stuff on there, we used to put stuff on there? That was the last cable company that I don't know.
That was Cablevision about.
Yeah, okay. I don't get cable. So.
20 years ago and 4 carriers ago.
Oh, sorry. So is there a station now for this carrier of something like that or not anymore? Probably.
Whoever the cable provider is required to carry anything that you deliver to them over their public access station or channel. Oh. So if you take them this file, they're required to play it. I think on channel 17.
Like on a local chat, it's a local channel?
Right. Whoever the cable company that the city gave the rights to dig the holes for all of the cables to go on the ground, they're required to carry any public access. In fact, any citizen or any public agency can just deliver the file and say play it, and they're required to play it.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, maybe you might check into that too. That might be a good one. Even the whole presentation, you know.
Yeah. I know the City Council, Desert Hot Springs City Council, they have their meetings shown on channel 17. So it could definitely be something to look into.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Okay. Well, maybe they all have it, Randy. Okay. Director Grasha, you haven't asked a question. Would you like to make a comment, ask a question?
I think for now, I'll stay out of it. I made a couple of comments on social media, a result of somebody trying to lay this whole fiasco on me. So I responded to that with a post. I haven't heard that claim that this is all my fault since then. So I'll until we are able to flesh our way through this, I would like to say, and I always hate to point out to our employees because I'm afraid that they'll get picked on. But I know April must be under great stress, and I want you to know I'm hearing even from people most impacted that you're doing a great job. I don't know how much of this stress you take home with you at night, but I know you're understaffed and definitely overworked now. So just know that the community-wide, you're well thought of for being able to handle this. And beyond that, I'll just leave it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Okay, so anything else from the board before I go to the public? Okay, so Dory, what do we have for public comments?
I have guest with the phone number ending in 2201 has a hand up. Do you still wish to make a comment?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, how you doing, folks? My name is Joseph, and I reside in Desert Hot Springs. I've been a local resident for over 20 years. I live on the cross streets of Hacienda and Palm Drive. I work for the city of Indian Wells, and also was part of the Coachella Valley Water District, where they were mandated for the golf courses to start using domestic water, and then went to the Colorado conversion. So I was part of that project. So upon doing so, I got a lot of information from that, and started doing my own personal data retention as far as gallons per minute flow from my current sprinkler heads, from the time of use based on my family size of 5, pretty much flow. Once the new meters were installed, we used an apparatus which we call an inline meter to kind of see and speculate to see if the meters were actually rigged or had problems with actual flow control usage. So as a courtesy, I took one for my project and I put in an inline meter. Now the inline meter is installed after the main water, I guess after you guys' water domestic line. Mine comes from the back alleyway, which is an easement, and to see if anyone had tapped into that or so forth. So based upon 2 months of data or usage, I've been using about what you guys call about 34 units, which is, 1 unit, 748 gallons for 1 unit. So my average, and based upon what your data is, totally incorrect. And I like to be able to provide some type of data for you guys to evaluate. Some of those meters can and are not necessarily flawless, but pose a lot of problems. Currently, right now, we have over, I would say, 9,000 of your guys's, and I would say, well, I don't know what type of meter you guys are using or what company, because I've tried to get that information myself and have not been successful. But the company we currently right now, they're in litigation as far as they have a 15 to 20% higher average use than your typical, flow rate. And I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but I mean, I'll be willing to have someone come out and then try to dictate otherwise, because an inline meter, of course, is not picture perfect, but I mean, a 5%, 10% gesture of, under usage, over usage is pretty close. And, my last bill was overusing 80,000 gallons, and I don't have a pool. I have artificial grass. My house is only 15 years old. I've done a pressure check. I've called outside agencies to perform, because the best of interest is not have a conflict of interest of having someone tell somebody of the same, doing the same business. Otherwise, if their information is correct or not, if that makes any sense to you guys.
No, it's some good information. I would think that, Brian, that you guys would be interested in hearing what this guy had to say and showing, you're muted, Brian, and showing what, showing you guys what he has. I think that would be a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll reach out to them after this meeting.
Okay, does Dory have,
time.
sir?
Yes,
Do we
ma'am.
have-
We
Okay.
do have another speaker, Mr. Rob
Yes,
Dow.
ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to bring up, I had some water problems. It's been about a year ago. And you and Randy were kind enough to check into it for me. And I had a bill that was $164.69, which got reduced to $53.34. In the last 6 months, my bill has gone from $96.11 per month to $45.38 to $34.80, $96.55, and all of a sudden up to $162.40 and $153.21. That's a pretty big jump in the last couple of months. They had a leak right after they put the new meter in. There was a leak, and the water was bubbling up out of the ground. Called, it took about 2 weeks for them to come out and fix it, but they said the leak was on their side, not my side. So I'm just alarmed that my water bill has basically tripled. And it's not, there's only 2 people who live in the house. And yes, we do some outside landscaping, irrigation, but nothing has changed in the last 6 months, the way we use our water. So all of a sudden, you can see why I'm alarmed that all of a sudden my bills are almost 3 times what they were.
Okay, there's another one for you, April. Sir, would you like to talk to April on the off time about this? She'd be happy to get a hold of you. I'd like to know why too, from what you're saying.
Yeah, please call in so I can assist.
I'm sorry?
Okay. Go ahead, April, say it again.
Mr. Dow, I said if you would, I can either reach out to you or if you could call in and I can assist you. My extension is 120. And I'm happy to work through this with you.
Okay. I have trouble hearing. I put the headsets on so it'd make it easier for me to hear, but I have hearing loss, and so it's a little difficult, and I apologize for that.
Oh, no problem.
But anything that can be done to check it out further would certainly be appreciated.
Definitely.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch tomorrow.
I had briefly, okay. I've known Steve Grossi for a good many years. Ran against him in City Council in Palm Springs back in 1990. So I've been around for a long time. I've lived in Mission Lakes off and on since 2004. So this is the 3rd home I've owned here. Never had any water problems like this before. I even thought about, briefly, about applying to run for the water board. I may decide to do that in the future. But I'm glad to at least that you're taking the opportunity now to explain some of these things to people, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't get the mailings that he talked about early in his presentation. And so I don't know why that would be either. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say at this point in time. Certainly anything that can be done to help the situation would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Dory, we have his phone number?
I do not know. He logged on via video. So Mr. Dow, if you'd like to send that to me in Messenger in the chat, it's a private chat, we'd be happy to reach out to you.
Okay. Well, my phone number is 760.
You don't want to say that out.
250.
You don't have to give it over this platform. Type it into that private chat and I will pass it along to April Scott.
Do you know where the chat
Okay,
is?
thank you.
Yeah, we were communicating earlier.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Yeah, you don't want to say
probably
out to everybody. Okay, thank you. Anybody
Okay,
else?
thank you.
I do not have anybody else who would wish to who has indicated they would like to speak. So this is your chance, folks. If you'd like to say something, please wave a hand, put up your hand motion, your raise hand icon. Nobody is making that indication, President Wright.
Okay, thank you very much. So, okay, well then I guess we will go into general manager's comments. Brian, it looks like you're the one. Do you have any comments?
I have no additional comments other than to thank April and her staff. They've been working tirelessly since the month of February, working through all the concerns that our customers are having, and they've been fantastic. So thank you to April and to our staff. We're a team here and we appreciate what they're doing.
And ditto from the board too. Thank you. Director's comments, again, one more time. Anybody have anything to say? Craig Randy. Go ahead, Randy.
Matt, good presentation. That makes a lot of sense, the way you were talking about the smoothing or the averaging or the whatever you wanted to call it. Now that's ending and we're in the middle of one of the hottest summers we've had in many, many years. So that sudden spike could actually double, you know, with more consumption, even over the average. So very informative. Thank you for that. All the staff did a good job. That's all I have.
Okay, Russ, you're muted.
There we go. Two things, Matt and Brian, if you could put together a recommendation for a rate study so that we can iron out some of these things, that would be helpful. And also, you're going to look into whether or not it would be legal or proper for us to hire independent contractors to do a forensic analysis of private property with the permission, of course, of the property owner. We wouldn't come on there without being asked to do that. So you can look into those two things. I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
President Wright, before you move on, I do have a member of the public that has raised their hand to speak.
Okay, Steve, you want to do it after?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to that public comment then.
Okay, guest SMN975U, you have the floor.
Yes, good afternoon. My question is for Matt. Maybe I'm not understanding correctly what he said about the meters, that they were a little bit old before, and that's how they were guessing the usage. So can you kind of tell me that a little bit? Was that for meters that were installed a while back then, or that's why you went to new meters?
Sure. I don't want to get into too much detail here and confuse anybody even more, but one component of a meter is what sits on top of the brass body and has the dials, and or the ones that we had that failed had digital screens on them, and that's referred to as a register. And so the manufacturer defect that occurred was with the registers. So technically you could say that the meter was still working, but we couldn't read it, so it kind of wasn't working. And like I said, I don't want to get too technical, but that was the case. The registers began to fail on a widespread basis, but we also knew, based on the age of the meters themselves, the brass bodies, that it was almost time for us to start considering when we were going to replace these meters. And so rather than go and fix this manufacturing defect issue with the registers, and then possibly 2, 3, 5 years from now, go back and replace the meter itself or the brass body of the meter, didn't make a lot of sense. If we were that close to needing to replace them, we might as well make one trip to the meter box and replace the thing in one shot.
Okay, the reason that I asked that is because my property was built in December of 2019. So would I have had an old meter installed, or was it a brand new meter that was put in?
Installations started the second week of December in 2019. So it just depends on where you are.
No, because I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's because I had the meter installed when they broke ground for my home, because we did live in a rural area. So they installed a brand new meter, and then they came again in, I believe, March or April, and they installed the newer meters. So that's when I saw the big spike too. So when they came and installed the meter when we first built our house in December, did they install a faulty one or an older one that caused that to happen, or what was the reason for that? That's what I was, because I understood what you said, that the older one started failing, but since my home was built in December and they installed new everything, so was I being estimated on how much I was wasting? I was being overcharged or undercharged, or?
Yeah, I understand your concern, and I hear the issue, but I don't have the answer in front of me. If you would call us or call me directly, we can answer all of those questions for you.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I'm asking. I understand that they did fail. That there was, problems from the ones that were installed maybe back a couple of years ago. But since mine is fairly new and I had a steady fee of how much I was being paid, and when we do leave, I do shut off the whole water to the house, so there's no water coming in. But now it's spiked up, so I just wanted to know if I was being maybe undercharged, overcharged, because I believe mine wasn't one of the older ones. It was one of the newer ones, and then they reinstalled it again.
Okay. No, that's a logical concern. I hear you, and if you'll give us a call, we'll get to the bottom of it for you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Okay, Dory, anybody else?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, go ahead, Director Gasha.
Yeah, to the citizens that are on the line, I would suggest you stay engaged as this percolates and moves forward, so that you can make sure that your issues are addressed. If we missed them here tonight, bring them up again at our next meeting. there's a lot going on here, as you may well be aware. There's an election in a couple of months. I don't know how this thing got rolled out. There's a couple of lawsuits that are being talked about, and or more maybe. So myself, being usually not at a loss for words, is concerned about being the one director that sets off a string of issues that might not be helpful to the district as a whole now and after the election. I would ask that the president schedule at the next meeting or the next possible time a executive session with council so that he can help set up some guide rails, if you will, to keep us from driving this thing into a ditch completely. I know that there was a claim filed a few months ago. That potential litigation appeared on our agenda a few times, and then it went away after the claim was denied. But I understand that there's a certain amount of time that claimant might have before he files actual litigation. So I would like to hear from legal counsel on that, and any kind of communication that may be going on between that potential litigation and others that might be floating around that I don't hear about, because as you know, I don't hear much of anything. Also, there was a public statement by the district online about a fired employee, and I'm noticing that there are a couple of people missing from this meeting that are normally with us. And I'm not suggesting that there was any action taken, that might have been just a denial that somebody was fired, but there's a couple of people I'm interested in knowing where they are tonight. I'm not requiring an answer, but maybe somebody can fill me in on that as we go forward. So there's a lot going on here, folks. Stay engaged, keep your ear to the ground out there, and we will try to bring you an agency that is responsive to what we're supposed to be doing here, and not some of the nonsense that's been going on years past. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We did have one, I think maybe we ought to comment, maybe Brian or Matt or April, on Darla Berry. Yeah, right, Darla Berry. Maybe people saw her on the news the other night. And I just thought maybe, Brian, you had mentioned there that it might be on again, but her letter to you, to Brian, to the water district, and her problem that she had aired on the news on KESQ that ended up not being what she thought. I think we should mention that one.
Yes, she did appear on KSQ on Friday. We had reached out to her before that broadcast and subsequently followed up with her after that broadcast, and we have worked with her to help her with her issue. It ended very positively. We can't talk about specific customer information, so I don't want to get into that, but I can tell you that it ended very well. She feels very, April, do you know exactly her response? It was thanking us for how kind we were and things of that nature. So it was a completely different perspective than may have been given on Friday for sure. April, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, she just thanked us for ensuring that the meter is working properly. We sent a technician out again to assist her. They did indeed find a leak at the property. And she was very happy and satisfied with the information, and we're able to work with her on her billing as we would with all customers that encountered a leak. So it did end up very positively, and she did thank us for our kindness and understanding. So it was a wonderful outcome on both sides, I feel.
Yeah, I think she was very happy. I think she felt bad about going to the media after it found out about it. But anyway, thank you. I just thought that would be a good story for today. Yes, Ivan.
I had a couple director comments as well. I just wanted to give a big thank you to Matt and whoever helped put together the presentation. I think that's going to be very helpful for those that weren't able to attend the meeting to see it online, whether that's social media or our website. And really just to reiterate, if you're having issues, if you have a high bill, any questions, please call in. You know, we can't help unless we know really what's going on, and we can kind of dive deeper into your issues. And want to give a big thank you to April Scott. I've heard from multiple people just how nice she is and how helpful she's been in their issues and how they've been able to resolve some of the problems they were having. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, April. Any other board members want to say anything else? Okay, if not, Mr. Pinckney, do you have anything to say? Or if you're not on here, but thought I'd ask.
I'm on here. No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. So if nothing else, and no other comments, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating, and stay safe and take care.
Thank you.
you.